Just to bring everybody on the same page, the commission was created back at the end of the 2016 legislative session, and it was a joint effort by the governor and the General Assembly. And I think that's important because I think if we're going to ultimately have success with education reform, it has to be a bipartisan effort. And so the governor and the General Assembly put this commission together, asked me to chair it, and it was to develop policies and practices so that Maryland schools would perform at the level of the world's best systems, school systems. And I commend our leaders for thinking in those terms. I've come to understand no other state has yet tried to reach that high of aspiration. States have tried to improve their education system, looking at what other states are doing. But the aspiration of looking at the best performing systems in the world is new. And when you think about it, and you think about our future, very important, given the nature of the economy and its global sense. We all know the role of education in building both individual and national and state success is more dependent on education than ever before in history. And so that's the right way for us to think as both a nation and a state. And then, of course, we were asked to develop cost estimates so that, and funding formulas so that these recommendations could actually be implemented. The commission, the 25-member commission, was very broadly drawn from across organizations that are connected to K-12 education. It included the collective bargaining units, both the one in Baltimore and the MSEA. It included business leaders. It included representing the county councils. It included the superintendents, the State Board of Education, 8 members of the General Assembly. So it was really an alphabet soup of organizations that came together. And of course that created a bit of a challenge because everybody came to the commission knowing how to fix the problems in education. The only problem was there are 25 different opinions, and getting to some form of consensus was a particular challenge. One member of that commission is actually in the room with us, and that's Margaret Williams. And one of the high points of my time on the commission was getting to know Margaret, and what a phenomenal resource she was for the work of the commission, and I think got all of us to understand in ways we probably would not have thought of about the importance of early childhood education and early child development. So when we came to this commission, many people thought, well, Maryland schools are pretty doggone good. I mean, we've been rated best in the country. We've been, frequently cited as having one of the state's best, nation's best school systems. And yeah, we've got some problems here or there, but we start from a very good base. But we were, I think, chagrined and surprised to learn that simply isn't the case if the measure of a strong school system is what students are actually learning, the outcomes of the education process. So you look at this second bullet. Now, incidentally, let me say up front, we have fine schools in our state. There is no question about it. And I've got granddaughters attending schools in Montgomery County that are very good. They're getting a great education. So we have fine schools in our state. And we have some excellent, superb teachers. The problem is we don't have enough of either. Every jurisdiction in this state, including this one, has failing schools. Schools failing our children, and not nearly enough outstanding teachers. So one fact we learned as we began our work is that Maryland is very much in the middle of the pack when it comes to learning outcomes. Those of you who are not enmeshed in the language of K-12 education, NAEP is the National Assessment of Education Progress. It's an exam, it's a test mandated by the federal government, same test given in every state in the U.S. So it's a very fair comparison of how students are doing in relation to other states. And when you see 29th in 4th grade math, that's 29th out of 50 states. That's nothing to be proud of. That is not a strong overall school system when you have these kinds of numbers. And here was another shock. The NAEP is given every 2 years. And so if you go back to the previous time it was given, 2013, the results, we are the only state, now think about this, we're the only state in the United States that had lower scores on all 4 of these exams. That's Maryland. Well, you know, if the U.S. was the shining city on the hill for education, okay, being in the middle of the pack in the U.S. wouldn't be too bad, but we're not. The PISA exam is a well-known exam given in advanced economies around the world. 15-year-olds are given this exam in reading, math, and science. And so you see where the U.S. is in this regard against other advanced economies. So 23rd in reading, 38th in math, 25 in science. So the bottom line here is Maryland schools perform at a very mediocre level in a country that performs at a very mediocre level. That's the reality that the commission was facing. But worse than that, we have significant funding inequities in our K-12 system. And this was a cause of great concern for the commission. I would say the overarching theme to our work was in large part addressing inequities in our K-12 system. So one of the ways to illustrate the regressive nature of how we fund our schools is to just do a quick comparison between some other states. So if you take all the schools in a state that don't serve any low income kids, and we certainly have them, drive down to Potomac, then that's one category of schools, and then take the schools that serve at least 30% low-income kids. New Jersey spends $3,000 more per student on the latter over the former. Massachusetts spends roughly $1,500. We spend in Maryland $1,200 less. Can you believe that? High-performing school systems, as we learned around the world, don't do that. They invest more money in school systems that are serving kids that need the resources most. It's a no-brainer. Of course you would do that. But we don't in Maryland. Also, we observed, and I guess many people are aware of this, we have significant achievement gaps in Maryland based on income, race, and disability. But here is another fun inequity that the state has to address. This cannot be allowed to stand. There was a predecessor commission called the Thornton Commission, and they created a report called The Bridge to Excellence. And it had the benefit of adding significant funding to our schools. And there was great hope that it would lead to an exceptional school system. And in the early years, there was some progress, but it has definitely plateaued. And we've not gotten to where we thought we would be. But the Bridge to Excellence said how much schools could have going out into the future. And so if you look at what the report said, the Thornton formula says schools should have in 2015, and you look at those schools that have 85% or less of what they were supposed to have in 2015, 53% of African Americans still attend those schools. Only 8% of white students. Think about that. In Maryland, that cannot stand. That has to change. Part of our issue is, I said, we have some wonderful teachers in the state. Maybe some of you are those wonderful teachers, or have relatives who are. And you know, we're thankful for these dedicated souls who are willing to commit their lives to this noble calling. But we have we have salary issues. We have working condition issues. MSEA was incredibly powerful in bringing these to the fore as we did our work. So as a result of the working conditions and compensation, we have significant teacher shortages. But listen to this statistic. If you look at all the teachers who are now in their second year of teaching, so they've been through the teacher prep programs, they've gotten certified, they're now in their second year of teaching, 47% of them won't come back for a third year. Wow. How do you build a strong school system? You know, teaching is no longer a career. It's a revolving door. So the bottom line is this. And if this doesn't keep you up tonight, worrying and fretting, I don't know what would. Fewer than 40%. We're going to have I guess just had graduation ceremonies in high school across the state. And fewer than 40% of those high school graduates this year meet the state's mandated college and career ready assessment. Now, every state has to have a college and career ready standard that's mandated by the federal government again. And Maryland's is especially low. Now, here's our college and career ready standard in the state of Maryland. You can read at the 8th grade level. You can pass an Algebra 1 exam. If you can do that, you're college and career ready. No wonder there's so much remedial education going on in our community colleges and our universities. But think about the fact that fewer than 40% of our high school graduates meet that standard. It's breathtaking. What does that say about our future? What does it say about their future in an economy that puts a premium on knowledge and skills in education? This is, I would think, if the citizens of the state know this fact and don't do something about it, we're going to have the kind of state we deserve in the years to come. So that's what the commission was suddenly was showered down on the commission. This heavy dose of reality about where we are. And remember, what are we supposed to do? Make recommendations so we'll perform at the level of the best performing school systems in the world. We must do better. We have to do better, both for the economic future of our state, but also, and most importantly, how does any child have a chance at a successful life and a good career if we don't equip them with a world-class education? How does any child get out of poverty today if they don't have a first-class education? So there we are. We know what the data tell us, and we're supposed to make these recommendations. So how in the world are these 25 people going to come up with the right recommendations to make us as good as the best? So we were blessed to find a very highly respected not-for-profit think tank in Washington, D.C. called the National Center for Education and the Economy. And guess what the National Center of Education and the Economy has done? For the last 30 years, they have studied what are the elements of a high-performing school system. What makes a school system high quality and very strong? They've done this significant research, and out of this research, they have developed the building blocks of high-performing systems. And what's amazing is that these high performers, they exist in different parts of the world. They have different economies. They have different political structures. But they almost to a T follow these building blocks. So what the commission did was to take on a very intensive effort to do a gap analysis. We basically took these building blocks and we did a gap analysis between what the high performers do and what we do in Maryland. And our report basically is filling those gaps. But I cannot overstate, and this is important for people to know, how rigorous this gap analysis was done. This was not 25 people sitting around and drawing up good ideas that occurred to them at the moment about what we need to do. This was done through very intensive research and analysis. So we took 4 high performers internationally, and we felt we had to throw in the mix 3 states in the U.S. Incidentally, only 1 state in the U.S. performs at a high level internationally, and that's Massachusetts. But we wanted to also get some local U.S. comparisons. And again, we are the first state to undertake this kind of in-depth analysis on this issue. So out of this work, we came up with 5 major policy areas. And incidentally, if you want to really get into the details of them, if you go to the website, Maryland's Commission on Innovation and Excellence in Education. Unfortunately, you could also, if it's simpler, Google the Kirwan Commission. I hate the fact that it bears my name, but I'm very proud of the commission. And in any case, you can go there and you can get intensive detail on each one of these recommendations. So I'm just going to very quickly summarize. And we start off with invest in early childhood education, and I should say in and development. And this was really so deeply influenced by Margaret Williams, but and others who understand and pursue this issue. So, what are the recommendations here? First of all, is that there should be free, full-day preschool, high-quality preschool for every low-income 3- and 4-year-old in the state. Full-day, free, high-quality 3- and 4-year-old low income. And you know, there's all sorts of data that show if kids have a high-quality early childhood preschool experience, it gets them onto a much more equal playing field when they get to kindergarten. And but there is a quality indicator here. I don't want to get into all the detail. There's a ranking of the quality called the Excel standard. And for those of you who know that, basically we're saying that within 5 years, every preschool provider has to be at the Excel 5 standard. But this isn't enough. Margaret and others got us to understand that it's not just preschool but we've got to invest in children, both pre and postnatal. There's got to be resources for young mothers, particularly living in different economic circumstances, to have good care. And so what we are doing is a recommendation to greatly expand, I think double, roughly, the number of family support centers and ensure that they exist in every low economic jurisdiction. Also to significantly expand the Judy Centers, which are a partner with the Family Resource Centers. Second, we have to translate teaching into a high-status profession. There is not a high-performing school system anywhere in the world where teaching isn't valued and seen as a high-status profession. So there's lots involved in this particular recommendation, but one of the main initiatives is to create a stronger teaching preparation programs, higher certification standards, and a merit-based career ladder so that teachers can stay in teaching and have a real career. And the goal is to have compensation benchmarked against other professions requiring similar levels of education. There's lots more in this particular recommendation about the nature of the workplace for teachers. The third is to implement a rigorous curriculum benchmarked against international standards, leading to college and career ready at a much higher standard at the 10th grade, and then allow kids to choose pathways after that would be advanced placement courses or do early college. They could even in high school with a 2-year degree, or participate in a very rigorous career and technical education pathway so kids can leave high school and get some of those $60,000, $70,000 jobs in the workplace that are sitting there waiting for appropriately qualified graduates. Ensure, and then the fourth is to ensure, this is the equity issue. We have all sorts of recommendations to ensure we invest properly so the kids who have the greatest need are getting the kind of support that they deserve. So one of the big ideas here is that not only will there be compensatory weight for a low-income kid, but we're going to give extra money to schools, recommend this, depending upon the concentration of poverty. What we learn is that as the concentration of poverty increases, the needs in the school rise. And so that on top of the compensatory weight, there would be an extra funding for these schools. And then finally, there is the governance and accountability. And here, let me say that this was a huge challenge for the Commission. Because as we did our work and began talking about it, a lot of people liked the first 4 policy areas. They made sense. And they were rigorously derived. But there was this sense that how do we know if we do these things and invest the money, we'll get the results we want? And rightly or wrongly, they look back at the Thornton Commission and its recommendations and feel there wasn't enough accountability. In fact, Alvin Thornton has told me that things broke down because the accountability broke down. And so, rightly or wrongly, there is a sense that accountability left only in the hands of the State Board of Education is not sufficient. They have to play a big role. They're going to be a major part of this. But the recommendation here is that in addition to the State Board, there would be an oversight board of highly regarded individuals with the right kinds of expertise that would have to authorize that the recommendations have been faithfully implemented and we were getting the results that we desired in order for the full funding to flow. So let me wrap up. What's the current status? As we completed our work, we got a letter from the presiding officers, that's the Speaker and the President of the Senate, who said that the General Assembly could not deal with both the policy recommendations and the division of costs between state and locals in a single 90-day session. So they want to know the cost, total cost. They wanted to know what the policy recommendations are. And the Commission is to work over this summer and come back so that there could be an omnibus bill next year, which would actually divide the cost. We have provided a detailed 10-year implementation plan in all 5 policy areas. And what the plan says, the total cost over the next 10 years would rise to an expenditure of $3.8 billion over what we are currently spending. And that's a significant amount of money, but it's less than 3% a year to get there. So we completed our funding recommendations. We gave our interim report with all this detail to the General Assembly. The General Assembly put forth a bill called the Blueprint for Maryland's Future in this legislation. It was sponsored by the presiding officer. And it embraced the policy recommendations. This is how education is going to operate in the future in Maryland. The Commission is, as I say, asked to make recommendations on the funding division. Before we go there, let's see, oh yeah, so the bill was overwhelmingly passed. This Blueprint for Excellence was overwhelmingly passed. Get this, unanimously in the General Assembly, and it includes. I seem to miss that in my. There was some. The bill includes. I don't have it in front of me. Roughly $250 million in this coming fiscal year to jumpstart the recommendations. And up $350 million for the state share of the cost in fiscal 21, and up to $500 million of the state share for fiscal 22. So the first 3 years, the state portion of the funds for the first 3 years are included in this bill. And get this, the bill passed unanimously in the Senate. Not unanimously among the Democrats, it passed unanimously in the Senate. And overwhelmingly in the House. Now we have a huge lift, of course, because this only takes care of the first 3 years. We've got to develop the funding that, for the rest of the time, and also settle the issue of the division of costs. So my last and final thoughts on this personally are, the Commission has produced a magnificent report. I am in awe of my fellow commissioners. This is an excellent report. It has gotten enormous national attention. No state has done anything like this. I have high confidence that if this is implemented, we would have one of the world's best education system in time. The cost is significant. There's no question about that. But what's the cost of not doing it? Can we live in a state where fewer than 40% of our high school graduates are college and career ready? It's with such a low college and career ready standard. There is an example. I mentioned Massachusetts. Massachusetts, if it were a country, and they oversampled for the PISA exam, so they could be treated as a country, would rank in the top 5 in the world. Now, Massachusetts has not closed its achievement gaps. They implemented a plan back in the late 80s and early 90s. If their gaps were, if they were like this, what they did was raise all the boats. But they didn't close the achievement gaps. But they didn't have the equity initiatives that we have in our report. So I believe we can actually excel over Massachusetts. So this is a big moment for our state. There isn't going to be another commission. Not in my lifetime, maybe in your lifetime, some of you, but not in my lifetime. So it's now or never, folks. at least for the coming decades. And so this is a huge choice. We can either just keep on keeping on and just hope maybe we won't be quite so mediocre in a country that is very mediocre. That's one option for us. Or we can be bold. And we can take a step at this time to put Maryland out in front and maybe even be a beacon for the rest of the country to change the quality of our education. And I can't help, I know I'm over time and I apologize, but I can't help but ending on this note. I'm probably the only one in this room old enough to be a child whose parents were in the greatest generation. And you know what about that generation? They invested in the future of their children, their grandchildren, and the world to come. We've lost that capacity in this country. We've lost that capacity in this country. We've got to recapture it. Because if we don't, we're not going to have a state and an America that we want our children and grandchildren to grow up in. So this is our moment. This is the moment in Maryland. This is our chance to show we care about the future. We'll make this investment and we'll be the model for the rest of the country to follow. Thank you.